About a month ago, there was a deal shown on one of the forums for extra % off and sale price on an Accusize 5-inch 3-jaw chuck. I have a 7x16 Mini-Lathe, and a 5-inch chuck will work on it. Can't necessarily use its full capacity, but one of the charms is that you can get larger stock into it without reversing the jaws, and it has a larger center hole, so you still can't go into the spindle with it, but you can get all the way through the chuck with larger stock. So let's start working on this. We need to get it unboxed and then make a backplate for it. Well, fit a backplate to it. Comes decently packaged. Everything is intact still. A nice chuck key. Spare jaws that I'll unwrap later for spares. These are the outside jaws. And these ought to be the mounting bolts to mount to the back plate. So it's nice that they included them. And then we have the chuck itself inside a styrofoam cushion that again survived the forces of nature. I'll get some paper towels, and we can start getting a little bit of the excess oil off and go from there. It does seem we've got a little bit of dirt to deal with in there, so first thing we're going to do is take it apart. Also found the packing list instructions. Now the vise does have a little maple leaf etched into the name above Accusize, but I think that's more just that Accusize is a Canadian company, not necessarily that this was made in Canada. See if there's anything in here that says where it was made. No. Kind of typical information you see on Far Eastern, we'll say, equipment. But not, even though there's not a lot of verbiage, it does appear to be in good English, which is a nice thing. So, and the specifications indicate that run out on the outer surface of the chuck is less than 1.6 thousandths. And on the face, less than 1.6 thousandths. On something chucked into the jaws, internal jaws, 3 thousandths at L equals 2/D. And on the outside jaws, the same. So that's encouraging. Reasonable run out. Not perfect, but then this costs less than $60, so one can't expect miracles. Get rid of some of the detritus here. Get we no longer need. See what the insides look like. It has straight screwdriver slots, which are a little bit unusual. Pardon my blocking. This looks like it has a plastic cover over the internals. Which is, again, a little unusual. Close fitting. Yes, it is plastic. But does act as a little bit more of a shield. As you can see, there is a cover on the back that covers most of the center of the chuck, leaving room for the pinions. And while it is the nasty black grease, I don't see any real grit inside, which is promising. Moves smoothly, and actually I'm not going to take it apart at this time because I do not see any grit. There's no excess grease. I'm going to clean a little bit of the grease out of the bottoms of the threaded mounting holes. Use my favorite tool for that, which is a Q-tip that's been compressed a bit, so that it will go down in the hole, and screw that in and yank out any nasty stuff. And as you can see, it's black. But otherwise, nothing really bad. In case you're wondering, I do have a trash can over there. I'm not just throwing it on the floor. Yep, everything's clear in there now. And wipe the mounting holes off a little bit. Get the excess grease off of them and out of the grit in there. And I think I am going to brush a little bit of thin Teflon grease in there, just to make things happy. Happen to have some handy. And I'll get an acid brush. Not going to use very much. Don't need a lot of lubrication. As others have noted, you don't want a lot of something in here to attract chips. Although with that little shroud, it looks like most of the chips that would come through the center hole are going to find their way into the spindle and not into the back of the scroll here. Advance the scroll a little, or the back of the scroll a little, so I can get at the other side of the pinions. And to the part of the gear that I couldn't reach because they were hidden by the pinions. And I think we're going to leave it at that. We'll wipe the screws off to get any grit off of them, but again, no grit, just dark lube. And since this cover shroud doesn't serve any purpose other than really just protecting the back of the chuck, doesn't need to be structural, it actually I think is a good thing. Snug these screws up because I'm not going to see them for a while. And while I have everything exposed here, I'm going to double check the depth of this mounting register. Just so I know how much I need to make sure I have left. And it looks like 142. Yep. 145 there. And 143 there. So 142. And I printed out a little bit larger chart. And it says that little h, which is the depth of the recess here, is 138. So, okay. And this being plastic, I wouldn't expect that to be necessarily dead on. The other thing I will do is it says that the diameter of this recess is D1, and that says 3,740. And we will see how close that is. I'm not going to machine to 3,740, but I will use that as a number to keep in mind. I'm going to machine to fit. And Michitoya says 3,740. 3,730 and a half, so again, that gives me something to shoot at. Alright, well, let me get this out of the way, and then I'll get the faceplate in, and I need to put the mounting studs into the faceplate, and then see how we're doing with that. Double check the measurements on that as well. Okay, here we are. This is the faceplate that I got from Little Machine Shop. I've already installed two of the studs. These are M6 by 1.0, 30 millimeters long. Alloy set screws, which makes them easy to install. I'll get them well started. The way I do this to all of the items that mount on my chucks, or my lathe spindle, I take the through holes and I turn them into blind holes. This is an M6 5 millimeter set screw. And I used to use Loctite, but then if you needed to take the mounting stud off for some reason, that could be a chore. So what I do is I run that M5 set screw in so that it's below the surface. Then snug up the long set screw against it, and then tighten a short set screw, and that effectively locks the studs in place. I am looking for 14 to 15 millimeters stick out on them, and I've got 14.9, 14.7, and 14.95. So that's good. I need at least the 14 so that I can get through the flange on the spindle and still have enough sticking out so that I have a thread or two after the nut runs on. I don't want to get too much because it gets harder to get the nut into the available space. Okay, now we're going to check two things on this. We will see what the depth of this is. I may have to redo how I've got the short set screws. Yes, this is 153. So that's going to sit a little bit deeper in than we want it to. Although over here I got 144. And I got 142 there. I'm going to run these short set screws in just a little bit more because I'm going to take a pass off of this because I will clean this surface up here once we get to machining it. And I will also then have to, because that will increase the depth of that register, have to take a pass off of this as well. So back these out a little. And I don't really want to be machining the alloy set screws when I do that. I don't need a lot of space, but I need more than I have there. And then once we're finished this exercise, we will see what stick out we've got and if that still falls into what we want. There we are. Good and tight. Now then, okay, 15.3, ooh, 15.9, 16. Well, we'll check that before we mount it and see, make sure we have enough space for the nuts to easily go in. Now we will see what we have for this register. Oh, I've got plenty. I've got 3 8/18. So I can take almost a tenth off of that. Okay, I'm going to change the camera setup so that you can see how I finagle the nuts onto the back of those studs. Okay, I checked the faceplate and I do have adequate clearance for getting the nuts in. So I'm going to leave the studs the way they are. If I didn't, I would either go to a shorter one, which I can't go too much shorter because it's only a millimeter or so. So I'd have to grind the ends probably a little bit. Now I do have an index mark on the flange on the spindle, and I put an index mark on the back plate. Insert it. That's a very nice fit. And then just use the fingertips to finagle the nut behind the stud. There's clearance, but not a lot. And it's actually better not to have too much because it makes the nuts easier to not go on the way you would like them to. In other words, dropping them. I do have a piece of hardboard across the ways. The back plate by itself without the chuck attached is much easier to mount. You don't have all of that cantilevered weight. And I'll have to make up a little shoe for the chuck that it will sit in and make it a little bit easier to mount. Because the chuck probably weighs twice what the, well, definitely twice what the 3-inch one weighs, and probably a good percentage more than what the 4-inch one weighs. Snug them up with an open end wrench, 10mm for M6 nuts. And that's ready to go.